Hey guys, John from Handcrafted here. Just want to take a minute to show you something that I think is often overlooked in the industry of doing even the more simple upgrades to a vehicle, such as replacing the radio. We often get questions about why do we go to such great lengths to do our installations in the ways that we do them. And so I want to make this video real quick to show you a couple different ways that radios are installed in terms of the wire-to-wire connection in the vehicle, and I'll show you kind of the way that each one is done and the way that we do it, and try to explain to you the reason why we prefer to do it the way that we do it. So you have a radio harness like this, and this is what plugs into the radio itself. And then you have the vehicle interface harness like this, which is what plugs into the vehicle's wiring. And what you have to do is you have to connect the two wires to each other, or the 10, 12, 14 wires to each other, so that the radio can have power and it can connect to the speakers and all that type of thing. So there's a couple different ways of doing that. Some of the most common ones are like this right here. So you would have two wires right here that you would take and you'd strip them back and you twist them together, and you could use something called a crimp cap, which is like this. Crimp cap goes over the wires like that, and then you just take a crimper tool and you crimp them together. So the two wires are connected to each other. It's a wire-to-wire connection. It's really not bad. It probably is not going to come loose easily at all, but there is a downside to it that I'll get into in a minute. So another option here is with a barrel connector. So again, you have two wires, spin them together like that, and you take the barrel connector, you take one side, put the wire in there, crimp it down, and you take the other wire, put it in the other side of the barrel connector, crimp it down, and again, pretty tight, probably not going to come loose. Now, one final option, well, I'm sure there's like other really bad options, but of the at least somewhat acceptable variety is this one right here. So this is what's called a T-tap. This is kind of like the bastard child of the car audio industry. Nobody really likes to use these things. But here's what it is. You have your wire in your vehicle, and it's a little plastic connector that you kind of crimp onto the wire, and it has these metal connectors inside of it that kind of bite down through the insulation and make contact with the copper inside. And then you have a spade terminal that goes onto your wire, and you just simply plug them into each other. Okay, so here's another one. So again, you can make it come apart if you choose to, but it's probably not going to do it on its own. So the question is, are these acceptable, and in which scenarios? So the downside to these, the first thing, this is the one that we won't ever do. We'll never use a T-tap, and there's a couple different reasons. First and foremost, you can, in tight situations, miss the copper and maybe barely make a connection, which can cause intermittent power, intermittent speakers to cut in and out, or whatever. In security installations, this is also very easy to bypass. So if somebody breaks into the vehicle, all that, oh, see that? Look at that. I mean, I'm not a weak guy. I crimped that thing down and it's still pulled out of there. So you could maybe double up the wire, bend it back over itself so it's really, really tight. But the problem is, you probably can't see it, but if you can look inside that connector, I did crimp it down, and just by giving it a tug, the wire pulled on it, right? So that's a possibility, that can happen. So that's trash. So the next option is the crimp cap, and the downside to this. So this one is a good connection because it is wire to wire, and I mean, it's definitely not coming apart as easy as a T-tap. But here's the downside to this. Again, you got 14, 16 wires, right? So you imagine that many of these things all bundled together, and now you have a ball of plastic connectors that you have to find somewhere to tuck away inside the dash. And in modern vehicles, increasingly more so, you're getting smaller and smaller amounts of space, especially in a vehicle like this one, a VW, smaller and smaller amounts of space to put these things. And so what you end up with is this big bundle of plastic connectors that you have to find a place to tuck them into. And then the question is, what might be hitting them? AC knobs that move around and things that move inside the dash, could that hit that? You don't really know, so then you end up trying to find a place for it and it doesn't work out well. So again, not an option for us, trash. So here's a barrel connector. So wire to wire, and then you got your connector in the middle. Again, good connection. I kind of got it to pull apart there. Maybe I just pulled the insulation off of it, but still not too bad. Not wire to wire because the two wires aren't touching each other. They're relying on the metal inside of the connector to actually make the connection. So, you know, there's some resistance there, but it's still not that bad. And if you have 14 and 16 of these together and they're all straight and you zip tie them well, they likely won't increase the size of the wire bundle too much. But the way that we prefer to do it is a soldered connection. And so here's the reason why. So what you can see if you look at this wire right here is there's the two ends of the wire are twisted together, and then solder is applied to the two wires, which permanently, physically bonds them to each other. There is no pulling these apart. There is no falling out. And then once we do that, what we do is we take heat shrink and we slide it over the connection, and then we heat it up and it shrinks it like that, so it's fully insulated, not going to short out on anything. And then what you can imagine is once this is all done, and I'll show you this in just a minute, we're going to take a break from the video, but once these are all done and secured, you can see how nice and slim that bundle is. So it's easy to hide this. We tape it all up so it's all nice and protected. Nothing's going to get caught, nothing's going to get pulled apart. But the most important thing is the physical connection of wire to wire that cannot be undone unless you cut it. So the question becomes, well, how necessary is that? And really, it's a matter of where you see value. But the way that we feel about it is that when we do an installation on a vehicle, especially because we're going to offer a warranty on the installation as long as you own the vehicle, we want to make sure that there are as few points of failure as possible. Because there's things we can't control, like the product malfunctioning, something in the vehicle not working properly, or something simply with all these electronic interfaces simply not working right. We can't control that. But what we can control is the quality of our installation. And the last thing we want is if you call up and say, hey, my radio stopped turning on, we know for sure it's not our connection. So it's something other than that. So that's the reason why we take the time to do things this way. So we're gonna pause the video in a minute, or for right now, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna show you this harness. It's all prepared, how we prepare it from here, and why that's important too. Okay, so we're back and we're in the car. And here you can see the radio mounted into the dash kit. So this is an Alpine doubled-in radio, and we mount it into the dash kit. One nice little thing is we always try and make sure it's nice and flush with the surface of the dash. It just looks better that way, but you know, that's not the point of this video. So the next thing that I want to show is, you can see here all of the connections have been soldered and heat shrunk over, so it's nice and neat. But then what I also want to show you is this tape, which is called Tessa tape, which is what we use to bind all the wires together. This is something that is kind of like I guess a hot topic as to the necessity of it. And realistically, I guess if you want to really break it down, it's not really necessary, but you do need to tie up the wires in some way. So you could do a bunch of zip ties, I suppose, and that might save you like 5 seconds maybe. But still, it will still bind the wires together. The only downside to doing that is then you have a bunch of little nubs sticking all over the place. And if you don't use the proper tools, they could be very sharp and they could cut you. But this takes no time at all, and we just stripe the harness with this tape. And another added benefit is that on vehicles like this, it matches the factory tape and what the factory does, as well as other European vehicles and even a lot of modern domestic vehicles as well. But the big thing that I want to show about wire prep and installation of even just a regular radio in a vehicle such as this is the finished product before the thing gets plugged in and it's ready to go into the dash. So what you can see here is that same kind of mentality of doing things a certain way and keeping it all nice and neat carries throughout the whole installation. So you have all of the connections that you need: your antenna, your steering wheel control connector, your satellite radio, your power. They're all right here. They're all binded together so that they're all in one nice connector. So then all you have to do is take these connections and you plug them in. Now that everything's plugged in, what you'll see is that we have a nice harness where everything's plugged in, it's all nice and organized, and all I have to do is just take this and I just have to drop it right back in the dash, and then I just simply put the radio in there. So what's the alternative, right? This is one way of doing things. The alternative is no wire management. All of your wires are not zip tied together. You end up with a bunch of loose wires and things kind of all over the place. And the things that can happen there is, A, you can forget to plug something in. So maybe you let the vehicle leave and the Bluetooth microphone isn't plugged in. B, a loose wire that wasn't secured properly could get caught on something and maybe torn as you're forcing the radio into the dash. And C, as things move around, as the vehicle drives on the road and it vibrates, things might become more vulnerable to damage. And again, because we are giving you the vehicle back and we're saying, hey, this thing is good to go and you got a warranty on it as long as you should own the vehicle, we want to make sure that we are taking out any potential point of failure that we can control. So that's the reason why we go that far. So if you're thinking about getting a radio installed and you're questioning whether or not it's worth it to you, monetarily of course, to go to a place that goes maybe what might be seen as a little bit above and beyond to do a radio installation versus going to a place that maybe doesn't take those extra steps, hopefully this video helps you to see at least what we believe is the value in doing things this way and how it will actually save you in future trips coming back to the shop for various issues and in just enjoying your system longer. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you got a lot out of it.